Anyways, you ready to get to our first caller?
Oh yeah, let's do this.
I'm excited. We're about to talk about Bigfoot for the first time on this show. James, you're on with Ethan and Martin. How are you?
Oh, hello, Ethan and Martin. I heard this discussion that you guys are in Austin, huh?
Well, Martin is
Actually,
right outside of
no,
Austin.
no, I'm in
Yeah.
Florida. No, no,
Oh,
yeah, the only thing that I said was that I volunteer with the atheist community of Austin, but I didn't mention that I volunteer
Ah,
remotely. I probably should
okay.
have added that.
Uh,
Yeah,
That's
I'm in
fine.
Florida,
But-
in South Florida, and Ethan is in where are you, Ethan?
I'm in Chicago
In
in this
Chicago.
crappy
Yeah.
cold weather.
You're mentioning most of my favorite cities in the country, and
Oh,
I'm your
nice.
neighbor in that I am in Alabama. So,
Oh,
Oh,
cool.
cool. Well, thanks for
Bible Belt?
calling, man.
Are you in
no
the
problem.
Are you in the Bible Belt?
Oh, yeah, sort of to some degree. I'm largely in Birmingham,
Oh,
so
okay.
not too bad. But there's
Gotcha.
plenty of deep belts here for sure.
Oh, cool. All right, so Bigfoot.
Well,
Tell
it's
us about it.
true. Well, when you asked this about believing in conspiracy, I'm glad you changed it to supernatural claim because I think Bigfoot falls into that, and I am in the thing of like I've kind of believed this with no evidence at all. I think it's just from having grown up in the 70s because I am 55 that there were all these very strange television shows and movies when I was a kid that talked about Bigfoot. And I lived out in the middle of the country and there was like no other houses around. There were lots of woods. And so I built up this belief that this thing was out there over a long period of time. And despite the fact that I've sort of like discarded like my belief in God and my belief in, all sorts of other things that I probably believed as a kid, I can't seem to let this one go, and I'm not really completely sure why.
So, what specifically was so convincing to you of Bigfoot?
Yeah, that's
Oh, fear. It was fear. We can already like pave that over because it totally was just fear. Because when I was a kid, and I honestly have dug around many times to find out like what is this movie. But there was a movie in the 70s, and it was in the theater, and it was kind of like a docudrama, and not really a mockumentary of like Bigfoot. And it was just framed the way all those old 70s sort of like or 80s. What was the thing with Leonard Nimoy? Uh, but
Star
like those
Trek?
shows where they're making these claims about that there's this supernatural thing and like nobody can disprove it, and when you're really young and they add that sort of like mysterious element and a lot of people think it's real and here's the evidence and you see these weird pictures or you see these weird videos. um, for me, because I lived out in the woods, it just created this real big fear in me of like, especially at nighttime, I would be really kind of terrified of thinking about Bigfoot when I
Right.
was growing up. And, and it really extended into my teenage years because during that time, the place I grew up in Alabama, there were like a lot of like local stories of other types of creatures. It was just I think cryptids were just such a big thing in the 70s, and Bigfoot even came to things like the Bionic Man television show, and so it was just I don't know, it was really really so deep in the culture at the time for whatever reason I'm not even sure, but it got it hooks into me, and it has never let go. It's the one thing. It's like this. I think I still believe that this thing is real.
So, when you say, are you like scared of Bigfoot right now?
No, as an adult, no, no.
Okay.
I think it would just be interesting if it were
right.
true.
Okay, and I hear you that it would be interesting for sure. Um,
Mhm.
Trying to think about how I wanna get at this. Ethan, you got something?
I was actually wondering the same thing right now.
So here's the thing. Not to completely just move past your experience, but just to add to it. I grew up in rural New York, around the Ithaca area, let's say. And I did a lot of camping as a kid. I'm actually an Eagle Scout, and we had all sorts of ghost stories out in the woods, and like people took them to various degrees
Yeah.
of seriousness, Um, But yeah, I know people who swore up and down when they were younger that they saw a ghost in in like a boathouse or something like that. Like I can think of a friend who said that. And if I asked him today, I can almost guarantee you he would say that he does not believe that thing anymore. And he didn't actually see it. So it sounds like it's kind of just like a relic of the past for you, but at the same time, there's a certain nostalgia value to it. It's like you said, like what would it be? Or it would be cool if it were true, right?
Right. And in somewhere in my head, I will say, like, I think I have this weird belief that it is true. And again, with no real evidence, I think it's just an emotional thing, probably the way maybe a lot of people feel about religion, or how a lot of people feel about whatever conspiracy theory that they've latched onto, of like, well, there's all this sort of tertiary and circumstantial evidence, but there's really nothing out there that's like, look, here's this thing repeatedly. We can go out in the woods and we can gauge and find Bigfoot and we can talk to him, or we can, at least like, watch him and, do it in a scientific way, but none of that's there. But it doesn't matter in my head. It's like, I think this might be real and I'm not sure why. Like I said, there's no defense of it. I just still believe it.
So
right.
Let me ask you this: what would it take to shake your confidence in that belief?
It's a really good question. It's weird, right? Is when you believe, I think, in something that can't be disproven or proven, well then all you have is believing in something. And I really literally spend a lot of time in my own head thinking about, and this may be even something you guys discuss frequently, is why humans believe anything at all, right? It's like why we accept that it's okay to believe things as opposed to just accept that the way things are. And I've discussed it with with my family and my friends of like, in my perspective of it is sometimes that it might be a thing that humans move past, that we, as time moves on, we stop.
Can I pause you for just a sec? I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. There's just something that you said that I wanted to address. You said you said that either accepting things the way they are versus believing in things. So you think that accepting things the way they are isn't believing in things?
Well, that's a good question, right?
I think you would still believe in something.
It's the same as accepting it, right?
Right. But when you said that we can neither prove nor disprove this thing, and just so you know, there is like a one or 2 second delay between us, so no talking over is intentional on our part, except for when I did politely try to interrupt you, just so I could say that one point. But yeah, I'm not trying to talk over you repeatedly. But no, what I wanted to say was we do have a way to disprove Bigfoot, at least to a large degree, and that's satellite imagery. I mean, am I saying that anybody has looked through every frame of every photo? No, but I mean, we have many satellites taking images around the globe. I think if there was substantial evidence that, at this point it would come out, whereas 50 years ago, or maybe in your childhood, well, sorry, you said the 70s, right? Yeah, that was about 40 or 50 years ago.
Oh, yeah. It was basically, I'm 55 now, so I was 5 in 1970, and so throughout the 70s, I'm between 5 and 15. So
right, yeah. And they didn't have satellite imagery to document the entire globe at that point, so that wouldn't even be a relevant talking point. So you see how, like, as time goes on, we have new ways of testing these claims.
If I were in a defense mode about it, I suspect I would say, well, we still come up with new discoveries of like large mammals like big cats on a semi-regular basis that are in these weird spots that we probably do have satellite imagery of it, but that we still have these discoveries happen of like, hey, we haven't seen this big cat in 50 years. And here he is. He's showing up on these cameras and we rarely ever see them. Now,
but has Bigfoot ever been seen though? That's the question. Sorry, go ahead.
I was actually going to ask the same thing.
I'm kind of in the same party as you guys, whereas like I feel like, look, everybody and their brother has a camera, or two of them. And the fact that there are no good pictures of Bigfoot, this should completely dispel the fact that I believe it. And it's like, why in the world would I continue to believe this when again, it's the same thing with with anything where there's all this imagery out there. There are people everywhere. And it's like, look, if people are claiming to see it and you still can't get pictures of it, despite the just so many available ways to image things.
So
it's why in the world do I believe this? I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, it sounds like there's a certain nostalgia value. Sorry, Ethan, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's very honest of you to admit that you don't know why you believe this, and it sounds like you're doing a very good job of already questioning it.
Sure. I think about it frequently. Like, this is so dumb. There's no reason for me to believe this. And again, I almost feel like it is just an emotional belief, like a phantom. I don't believe it as truth, but I believe it as an emotion, like almost like a phantom of truth, if that makes any sense at all, or a shadow of it.
Like you mean part of it? You think part of it is true, or it comes from something that was true?
No, I just mean more like in myself, I believe that it feels like the belief part might just be an emotional leftover, like of something that I was like you said, that I was nostalgic for as a kid. And then the reality of it is, do I see any evidence of this? No. And would I stake any sort of consequences on believing it? Well, no. But I feel like emotionally, it's the thing that's like, man, I still feel like I feel like I believe this. And that's what I'm saying, is it feels almost like it's like a shadow of believing in a fact.
Right.
And it's almost more like all that's left over is believing in the emotion part of it.
Well, right. And that's the thing is in my experience, feeling like you're right is the same as being wrong up until you realize that you were wrong, and then you no longer feel like you're right. You know what I mean?
I like that.
Yeah, no, but that's something that you have to keep in mind, is that nobody is, to my knowledge at least, and I think to Ethan's knowledge as well, nobody is all knowing. We're all kind of in this together, is how I see it.
Yeah.
And so information should be a collaboration, not an exclusive process. And so if there is evidence of Bigfoot out there, that's why I want to see it, is because I want to collaborate on that. But at the same time, barring any evidence of Bigfoot, I think that there's no good reason to believe it. One thing that I wanted to highlight real quick is that the absence of photos of Bigfoot does not disprove Bigfoot. Sorry, the absence of photos of Bigfoot does not disprove Bigfoot. However, it also does not prove anything about Bigfoot. And so absent photos of it, all we have are individual claims. And so if we look into the documentation of the claims, that's where we need to go from here, essentially, if there's no photos. And that's where it starts to get really shaky, because there's no actual scientific documentation, to my knowledge.
Right.
There's just story time.
And I will say, guys, stay away from, the many rabbit holes of people discussing Bigfoot, because it's the same sort of like, can I use language on here?
As long as it's not a racial slur, yes.
I'm good.
Yeah, okay. It's the same sort of like mindfuck as going down any rabbit hole of a conspiracy, is that when you start reading what people, theorize about it, it's like, it messes with your head. And I remember listening to a podcast, and I would listen to it mostly out of a thing of just trying to figure out why people thought the way they think. And I don't know if you've heard of this thing. It's called Mysterious Universe, and I haven't listened to it in years, but it was always very weird. And I didn't really trust the guy, but I would listen to it in a sort of like a entertainment value. But they would discuss the Yowie and the Bigfoot and all these different cultures that have this thing. And so clearly in my head, it's well, it doesn't mean that's a real thing. It just means that different cultures come up with the same stories, for various explanations on anything. But the rabbit hole is that if you go down too far, you start hearing people say, well, he's not on camera and he never will be because he's a multidimensional creature. And And then it becomes like any conspiracy theory where people are just making shit up. And it's like, well, how am I supposed to defend that? I can't.
Right.
To me,
and I think
it's like
what starts
you're just making up. You're making up your own fact about what this thing might be about, and it's like it doesn't work for me.
No, and I think that happens a lot. I think people are prone to, once they latch on to multiple conspiracy theories at a time, and once you start going down one, you start going down a bunch of others. But
yes,
James, it was a total pleasure talking to you. You were very honest, friendly, and you're already questioning your own beliefs. That is frigging awesome.
Yeah, thanks for calling in, James. We really appreciate it.
It's a routine thing of me questioning anything I believe on a regular basis. So
awesome. Well, thanks for taking the time to call in with us and talk with us today.
Absolutely. It was really great talking to you guys. I really appreciate what you're doing out there.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful day.
All right. You guys too. Goodbye.
Bye.